used to go to the Jewish Community Center. And the Jewish Community Center in Orange County was a beautiful place because one, we got a scholarship to go there. Two, it was a place where I could play basketball. We could try and stay fit, get some exercise. But it was also a place where we just felt at home, actually. We didn't always have those looks and those eyes of like, you don't belong here. In fact, we felt the counter. And Jon is a key player in making us feel at home in that space. But years later, I eventually made it to UCLA on a full ride scholarship called Jackie Robinson, named after the great baseball player. And I wrote a few papers that did well in a few circuits, where then I got a call one day saying, would you like to go to Northern Ireland and do research with President Bill Clinton as one of 12 students on truth and reconciliation? Now, I had never been outside the state of California, let alone the country. And here I was getting an invitation to go to Northern Ireland for a summer program, but it really cut into some of my time at UCLA. And I said, absolutely. And I remember getting that call because even when I was at UCLA, my mom was still in between the car or some ugly motels that I would never dare recommend to any of y'all. But I got that phone call and I decided to go. And there I was really trying to study the incredible history of the Troubles. And I'm going to be reductionist and simplistic. But I grew up, at least in how I was educated and how I consumed, current events, that terrorism was only done by like folks in the Middle East. Little do most people know, a lot of terrorist practices were actually created in Northern Ireland. And there's an incredible still history of violence and segregation that happens there. And I left school early, basically to go do this research with President Bill Clinton. And so I was fortunate. I had some more liberal-leaning professors who said, don't worry, we'll release our lectures to you so you can take your stuff proctored and study overseas. But I had 3 conservative professors who said, not so fast. We're gonna, if you're not in the class, you can't hear the material, good luck. So what did I do? I decided to still go, and my mom attended those classes for me and recorded every single lecture and would email them to me. This is before Dropbox, this is before Google Drive, any of that. I did well enough at this research program that then I got invited to be a youth advisor to the State Department and Secretary Clinton at a security conference. And then go back again to Northern Ireland to oversee the very same research program I had been a part of. Now, I'm doing all this when, as soon as I come back home, I am still unhoused. So it was a very jarring experience for me that here I was getting the privilege to work in some pretty high levels of government and research. But then as soon as I'd go home, my mom would pick me up from the airport and we would quite literally either stick it out in the car or go find a motel. And so from there, I then get an opportunity to go to France and study the rise of anti-Semitism. And I thought I was going to be living in the bougie parts right underneath the Eiffel Tower in Paris. No one told me that I'd be in something called the banlieue, where a lot of North and West Africans are subjugated to. And you could be born in France, but still not be considered French in the eyes of the law. And that leads to a huge sort of marginalization and segregation. But from there, I then got an opportunity to go work for Senator Cory Booker. Now, what folks don't know is that when I got the job offer to go work for Senator Cory Booker and do national security work for him, I could barely afford to even fly out there, let alone have a place to stay. And that's where you enter Jon Rosen. Because Jon Rosen is one of those people along the way, one of those guardian angels. When he came up to me and started asking, hey, what are you doing? Where do you need to go? I told him, yeah, I don't got a place to stay. I can barely afford to go back to DC. But he made a call and he spoke to a few people and found me a place where I could stay rent-free. And that enabled to me actually draft some of the first iterations of criminal justice reform, trying to restore voting rights for those who've been formerly incarcerated, as well as to do homeland security, national security legislation, trying to protect our country from threats from abroad. But that would have not happened if I had never gotten this opportunity enabled by Jon Rosen. And so along the way, I had, incredible guardian angels with Jon Rosen at the top of that, helping support me. And I think it sometimes takes in life a village of Americans to say, I will do my small part to support you. When I was working for Senator Cory Booker, I get a call from an Alabama phone number. And I think it's like a telemarketer or a debt collector or something like that. And it's from a man named Brian Stevenson, who was my biggest guy crush at the moment and still is in part. And this is a guy who is in trying to help abolish the death penalty in the United States. But not just by that by itself through impact litigation. He does it by trying to investigate the lynchings of African Americans and overlay the data of where lynchings historically occurred with where the death penalty is most actively used. And you will see a very strong correlation that lynchings of African Americans never really ended. They just turned from extrajudicial killings on the outside on the streets as public events to indoors. And so one thing when I got this job offer, I just did three things I'm really proud of. In Montgomery, Alabama, I helped document over 4,500 lynchings of African Americans. I also investigated some of the worst human and civil rights abuses in our country's prisons throughout the American South, not just for those who claim innocence, but those who did the harm. Because one thing that at least the Equal Justice Initiative really tried to preach, and is a virtue that it lives by, is one, we're all more than the worst thing we've ever done. No matter what you've done, you are still deserving of some sort of humanity. And that you don't judge a country by how it treats its wealthy and privileged, but really how you treat its condemned, its poor, its incarcerated. And so the third thing I also did was support anti-death penalty litigation. And I was that guy when after we were finished editing some briefs to stop executions from happening, Brian would ask me, you have to go deliver this at X, Y, and Z court because Alabama doesn't have e-filing systems. Don't ask why. And so I would have to sometimes go somewhere that's 5 hours away in 3.5 hours. Don't ask how I drove. But really that period of my life was the first time I had my own apartment. You could live quite well in Alabama on $42,000 a year. And it was a time when my mom moved in with me, but it was very spiritually challenging. I lost almost all my faith while living in Montgomery, Alabama, my religious faith, because the last thing I would hear before an African American was lynched in my research was scripture. Until this day, I still struggle with my faith because it's so hard for me to reconcile that we could use scripture to justify the public execution of a person based off their skin color. But let alone I have all these tenets about we are our brothers and sisters keepers. Now, after all these experiences, I thought I was going to law school to become either a public defender or an impact litigator. I was working to help unhoused veterans either apply for their VA benefits or, my more favorite of the two options, sue the VA to increase their benefits. I was also working for the federal prosecutor's office, trying to furthering prosecution on cyber crimes against children on the dark web. So I thought I was going to go into public work immediately, but mom was so kind to remind me that we have no money and I should go participate in something called on-campus interviews, which is this process where fancy law schools rent out a hotel and you have 10 minutes to tell this big law firm, hire me, please. And what I chose as my top law firm was a firm called Wilson Sonsini. Why? It wasn't because of our clientele. It wasn't because of it's in the heart of Silicon Valley or a particular partner. I chose this law firm quite literally on the chance because when my mom and I were living in the car, we would drive up to Mountain View and Palo Alto and sit outside Google's campus. And we would just sit and wait and see, okay, can we ask someone, how do you get an internship? We didn't understand the game or the process of how do you start to understand this industry. I was a huge science nerd at that age. But we would go and sit on this huge parking lot and take naps and eat off of Page Mill in El Camino. And it was only years later when I was in law school, I find out that this law firm is where that parking lot sits. And so I applied to Wilson Sonsini on the happenstance and just as a poetic joke to myself. Bye, Sheila. Thank you for joining. But as just like the happenstance of like, how funny would it be if I got a job? And by the grace of God, I did. And so that's where I am now. I'm a practicing attorney at this firm, not because I had the perfect resume for a corporate associate. Quite the contrary. Investigating lynchings or meeting with former Irish terrorists aren't exactly what scream out representing emerging technology law firm companies. But that's what I do today. And I share that because sometimes in life, things open for you and you never know how those opportunities are going to unfold and create something more meaningful. But I've still, as I've said, I've had this bug for public policy and it's something that I have a deep hunger for. And so I'm running for Congress and I'm trying to do something as my whole life story suggests. I'm trying to be this David versus Goliath. And I'm respectfully challenging a 30-year incumbent who is the largest recipient of pharmaceutical money in all of Congress and has made it more expensive for everyday Americans to afford drugs, even get access to generic drugs. And I'm trying to do this because arguably this congressional seat is the most influential in terms of climate change policy, because this district sits really on the front lines of climate change. The Bay Area is also ground zero for affordable housing issues, which I think will be a defining issue of this upcoming decade. And it is also a place where these tech companies are having huge market power over our daily lives and really are concerned to our individual liberties and the privacies we have. So I'm running for Congress and trying to challenge a Democrat nonetheless and say that, look, I respect someone who's been there for a long time. And I'm all for incumbency if you know how to use it, if you know how to leverage and lean into that power. But if you don't, and if you're not pushing legislation, and this Congresswoman in particular has only passed 5 bills in 30 years, 2 of which were to rename post offices, I think we can be doing way more in Congress, especially at this time when things are divisive and things are not working in the way that we think about. So I'll kind of stop my monologue. I can feel going on and on. I can see my mom eye rolling because I'm talking too long. But I would love to take questions from all y'all. I recognize I'm a very unorthodox candidate for someone who's trying to go for public office, let alone Congress. But the point of me sharing my story is that it is possible to lean into whatever adversities we've gone into and recognize that there is maybe sometimes a divine conspiracy pushing you in the direction to take a leap of faith to do something more. And that even in our individual capacities, no matter how small we think we can play a role in changing something so big, that we can do something meaningful. And Jon is one of those people in my life. I'm sure all of y'all are that for someone else. And I'm just trying to restore this sense that it can take, as a village and as a community, we can do meaningful stuff. So I'll stop there. I'll take any questions you may have. But I just want to thank you so much for your time and for listening and just trying to spread awareness and gain support for our campaign. So I'll stop there. I'll take any questions. Jon, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't have a single shy friend, and yet somehow no reason to put everybody in the spot. Go ahead.
Well, I'll start. I don't know if I can vote for you, but you have my vote.
Thank you, Rob. Look, so the seat I'm running for goes from San Jose all the way to like Pacifica, right below San Francisco. And so I am technically running in the country's wealthiest congressional district. But what I think that often gets missed out is that it's code for the largest wealth inequality. And there are issues that I think that we can do as as a moderate center-left campaign, really trying to do pragmatic things, you can get stuff done without demonizing the other side, with recognizing the humanity and beauty of the other side, in fact. So I so appreciate that, and we just need awareness. And if any of y'all are in have the capacity to contribute, we are in 1 month left before the primary, and we just need to get top two. In California, it's a top two system, so you don't need to beat the incumbent. It's if we get second place, which we're currently polling as, then we have till general. And if we do this, which shows all our data showing that we can, and we likely will if we come out of the primary, it'll be one of the greatest upsets in California political history. And I'm someone that believes that, nothing's impossible until it's done, right? So
I have to just give Pastor Seegears a bit of a nod. The only reason he can't vote for you is because he lives in Virginia. Otherwise, he would his vote.
But DC is my home, so
we'll be getting lunch then.
yeah.
So I've got a question for you, Ajwang. This is Ken Bassman again. What are you looking for? Is it just a donation? Are you looking for connections, introductions? How could we possibly help you?
Well, if I don't say donations, my mom will curse me out. So yes, we are looking for financial support, but it's not just that. And I will say, if we're able to raise 15,000 in like the next 3 days, I will get second place. And it's so odd to say that, but contributions we can just track, and it's really disheartening. But you can track that the more money you pour into something, we're just getting more and more traction, etc. But yes, if in your networks, if you know people who are in the Bay Area, who live in Palo Alto, Mountain View, or anywhere else, introductions could be so helpful, and hosting something like this could be so helpful. But first is, yes, any sort of financial support. But if you know folks who think you would be interested in supporting, that could help dramatically as well.
I looked at the website as well. Is it standard to have a policy sheet? I mean, where you are on certain issues so people could see whether or not they identify with you?
Yeah, so on our website, you should see at the top policies. And if you click that, you'll kind of get a sense of the direction of where I'm hoping to fight for the country.
Awesome.
One of my biggest issues is climate change. I think we're just running out of time on that issue. But also housing is becoming increasingly an issue in this country. And something such as foreign investors are buying up lots of properties in Silicon Valley, in Orange County, in Los Angeles, in San Diego. And they're just kind of keeping these properties empty. And so Canada just banned all foreign investment purchases of real estate 3 weeks ago. I don't think I'm not recommending that far. But if you're going to buy a home in this country, I think anyone can through any sort of corporate structure, but just use it. Let's have the market actually be used. And I think that's something that a lot of Americans support, at least in, the folks I've been talking to.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I want to tell stories, Ajwang, about the last, 8-10 years or so, but it's probably not the right forum for it. But I will tell you that I attended thank you, Ajwang, for getting a seat for me at the 50th anniversary of the UCLA Black Law Students Association. And Ajwang put together, first of all, he put the event up at the Beverly Hills Hotel instead of the Days Inn where they'd been having it in the prior 24 years. But in addition to that, he raised $180,000 for a scholarship for UCLA Law. And nobody had ever done anything approaching a fraction of that in the past history. So, as much as I know my friend has a moral compass that is, it's made out of gold, he's an incredibly effective leader and fundraiser. And Ajwang, I'll stop being surprised somewhere around my deathbed on the things that you're able to accomplish. I can see it happening in Congress, and that's what we're looking forward to.
Jon, you were key in making that gala happen.
No, I wasn't, but I was key in perhaps some of AJ's clothing choices. Thanks. He asked me the same questions that if I was smart, I would have asked my father back in the day. Do I wear blue or do I wear black?
No. Yeah, I remember that you got him the tuxedo.
No. It was quite a night.
Thank you.
But if I can just say one thing, like one thing I'm very cautious of and conscientious is I am not that Black young man that you point to of like, oh, that's how you made it out of poverty. Look, this is the rubric. You work hard, things. No. Yes, I worked my ass off at times. I've pulled more all-nighters than probably all my friends combined. But even in that context, it really takes people along the way and a series of miracles to come out of the circumstances that I did. I've somehow landed a triple flip on my feet by people along, like Jon Rosen and my mom and others like you all on this call saying, I'll do something small. And what breaks my heart is in America, it's just still so rare for those stories. We glorify them and we try to treat it as exceptions to the rule, if not the rule sometimes themselves. But the real reason I'm trying to go for Congress is that it shouldn't take miracles to come and get opportunities in this country. And that's really what I'm fighting for. And I think you can do that in a pragmatic way that is inclusive, that through like sensible tax, laws that, incentivize the flow of capital in the right direction, that is inclusive and that is uplifting for everyone. And I think all people need when you grow up in a car for as long as I did is a chance. And by creating those doors, then that's where magic happens. So that's what I'm trying to do.
One last question. I'm sorry. Is it possible to get support from the Democratic Party, or in that there's a 30-year incumbent already in the office? Is that where the support's going?
Oh, great question, Ken. I'll keep this short. No, when I started running, I got told that there are 16 people waiting for this seat and that the Congresswoman actually has already promised the seat to someone else. And that she wants to run one last time, and if elected, actually leave in a few months, because then do a special election for her hand-picked successor. And so we are organizing because we're throwing a huge wrench in that even though I am a huge fan of the ideals of the Democratic Party, it is odd to say that sometimes the party doesn't live by its own namesake. And so we are trying to challenge and upset that. And, Silicon Valley is so good at disrupting industries around the globe. And we're trying to do that to its political order. So, no, the establishment, I would say, is a very small group of people that are quite literally maybe 24 people. And they're the ones that kind of dictate. We've been organizing. I go door knocking every single day. Yesterday, my mom and I hit, I think it was like 250 homes. And that's how we do it. We do it grassroots. And the reason I'm not taking any corporate money or special interest money, I'm trying to just count on people's individual goodwill, is because I think when you inoculate a politician and a policymaker from those influences, then they can actually fight for what they believe in. And so we're trying to lean into that. Look, there's a simple formula that guides politics today. Money in equals policy out. Where you take your money from is indicative of who you're fighting for when no one's looking. And so I'm someone who believes in enterprise, in startups, in small businesses, even helping companies. But I'm also someone who believes in helping the little guy get opportunities. And there's ways of doing that in a way that's not divisive, that could actually get bipartisan support. But you just need different negotiators and different messengers, because right now I think the stakes are way too high in Washington and the vitriol is just out of control. And so I'm trying to go in there. And I think if I can knock on the door of folks who wave the Confederate flag or bring people to the table who quite literally once tried to kill each other in Ireland, I think talking with folks in Washington, D.C. is a little easier. At least I like to think. And I'm hoping to bring that skill set there.
Thank you.
Other questions?
If I may just add one thing, I think Ajwang didn't mention. I think it's too modest to say this, but Ajwang is truly fighting a David versus Goliath fight. The Congresswoman has come after this, after the campaign with the full weight of her power. And not only lately has there been an effort by some in the Democratic Party, to Ken's question, asking if Ajwang could meet with Nancy Pelosi. But aside from that, it's a true ground fight, and they're throwing everything at them with all the big resources they have against a smaller man per se. So Ajwang is fighting with everything that he's got.
Yeah, but Leah. By the way, if it's so much fun to have Leah on this call, and I hesitate to go too long, but I could on Ajwang's mom because, but I thought it'd seem provincial, but I trust you. There's unbelievable power there, but I didn't put it this way, and I should. And Leah, you bring up a good point. Ajwang has risen in his stature in attempting to unseat Anna Eshoo to the point that he's considered or the top contender for this Democratic nomination. So out of what was at one point well over a dozen people, as much as he's my friend and he's gracious enough to get on the phone with 15 friends of mine, he's the 799-pound gorilla in this run, to the point that there was an event that he attended, I think it was yesterday, where Anna Eshoo canceled her other event and drove to the event that Ajwang was at because she was intimidated at the idea that he was going after a room full of very powerful Silicon Valley influencers. So if I don't bring that point up, that Ajwang's the leading candidate to knock her off the throne, then we're not giving you all the data. This is a real campaign.
So true, so true. Same goes with the Barack Obama event about a week ago, when the former president was here. Ajwang and the Congresswoman crossed paths, and there was that setup already. So,
well, I will say thank you, everyone. You've met my shameless mother. But I will, just to give the stats. The reason no one's ever beaten Anna Eshoo, the Congresswoman, in 30 years is because you need to convert 1 in 4 of her voters. She's done a very good job of just holding certain folks and consolidating that support. And so no one's ever been able to convert 1 in 4. They usually go negative against her. And I think that is flops. We're converting from our data team 8 in 10 Anna Eshoo voters. So we're actually exploding that past it, which is why I think there's a lot of, I want to be objective, but I would say there is some attention coming our way just because of the traction we're able to get. The thing that we need is just more amplification and more resources to stay in the fight. And because if we come out of the primary and be one-on-one, 8 in 10, we're beating her. And I'm trying not to sound, I'm trying to not be have any hubris or be arrogant, but that's just, we're seeing the conversion rate happening before our eyes and acceleration. And so it's moving to me because I thought I wouldn't like campaigning. And there's a part of like the backdoor politics is very disheartening. I met with a biotech executive from Portola Valley, a very rich part of Silicon Valley, in early January, who offered me $75K in a pack if my positions on pharmaceutical policy would be X, Y, and Z. And at first I was a little flattered of like, wow, okay, at least I'm being seen as worth being bought. But it's heartbreaking because that's how politics starts. And that completely undermines the very reason why I'm trying to do this in the first place. So the reason we're trying to count on folks like y'all just to do whatever you can in your personal, because that's how I think until we get campaign finance reform, we need to count on, I think, the citizenry to protect our politicians if they have the right policies to say, we will shield you from those special interests. And when you go to Washington, you can think clearly about how to uplift people and not just meet with people when no one's looking. So point is, I really think we can do it. We need y'all's help if you can in any way. But ask any other questions you may have. Yeah.
You know what, Ajwang, let me ask one really quickly, and then I know Professor Gray would love to ask one because he's a leading disc jockey in the Los Angeles metropolitan area. That is me putting him on the spot. How do they reach out to you directly or to the campaign directly? Do you want me to share that? What's the best way to connect with you after this call?
Absolutely. One, I can actually just put my one of my main emails here in the chat right there, and I read every email that comes in, and if you guys can help in any way, it'd be a privilege to speak to you one-on-one. But also you can visit our website just to kind of get a little bit more background as to who I am and what we're doing. And that's how we do it, basically. So feel free to email me. If you missed this because you're not able to copy and paste it, John, please give them my contact information.
Well, of course. All right, Dr. J, I gave you a long enough lead time to decide which of your questions you wanted to ask. So do you know how to unmute? There you go. Oh, you're still on mute. What's happening? We can't hear you.
Yeah, I can't hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear you. It's that's for a guy who's in the recording studio every week. Yeah, there we go. All right. Well, you know what? Our loss, because I know there's something good in there somewhere. Yeah, you're back on. Is it it's probably your speaker.
Yeah, maybe your mic.
Your mic.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we tried. All right. Now, Leah, you're on mute as well.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
There we go.
I just didn't want to come through, but Jeremy, I don't think Jeremy knows he's on mute.
Yep. Whatever brilliance is coming from you.
I'm sorry, yeah, Jeremy, we can't hear you. But are there any other questions? And it would be a privilege to speak to any of you one-on-one if you have the time, future. But yeah, ask anything. Nothing's off the record. If I don't know the answer, I hate when politicians BS, like as though they do. I will just tell you I don't know, and I will find the answer. But please ask anything. And if not, I will just say it's an extraordinary privilege just to have y'all's time. And John
actually, AJ, Ajwang, I'm going to interrupt you in a second so you can have the last word.
Okay.
I moved to California 15 years ago, and prior to that, I was very involved in local politics. I was at Leadership Maryland and Leadership Montgomery, and helped elect the governor, and spent a lot of time working with people that fortunately ended up in a place where they could help others. We studied the principles of leadership, and I've become a fervent religious convert in terms of believing that the people that govern us as a society have to have a certain degree of character and a certain degree of set of principles, and to understand leadership, how it applies to everyone, what it really means to sacrifice and to serve as a leader. And I'll be frank with you, it's not that different than the way my grandparents taught me to behave, but it's about doing the right things when it's hard. And at literally the first week I met Ajwang, it was clear that that's kind of who he is. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Ajwang, but I'm really pleased to be able to get my friends here and to have you participate. But I will tell you that the very reason I want to see this gentleman be a congressman and everything else afterward is because in addition to everything else and what's in my heart is you are the kind of guy that we need leading the state, that district and the state and the country, and we'd be lucky. So thanks for everybody for taking the time. But again, let me turn it over to Ajwang for.
I appreciate it. And I know we're probably all in different geographical areas, but the last thing I'll say is this seat is actually a very unique one in that it's supposed to represent the heart of Silicon Valley, but it also is a seat that usually chairs the Energy and Commerce Committee. And what my point in saying that is any energy policy that is to come out of the United States will be headed by this congressional seat. Any policy or legislation that comes out on trying to protect our privacy rights against big tech and regulate it meaningfully and intelligently would come out of this seat. Anything that has to do with healthcare also, because there's such a huge healthcare base in this area. If you're someone that really is passionate about, the affordability of drug prices, the congresswoman is the chairwoman of the health subcommittee. And that's why she's been able to facilitate bills that have made drugs more expensive, not the opposite. And so this is a very influential seat to really that guides a lot of the affordability and privacy concerns for our country and for our children. So I'm just giving you something to chew on, because while your respective Congress people undoubtedly probably do good work and meaningful work, they may not sit on these committees that affect those particular target areas that you care about as well. So it's just something to keep in mind that when we think about Congress, the issues are national, they're interdimensional, they're interdisciplinary, and they're global at scale. And when we think about what's happening in Ukraine, it must bring up conversations about the country's need to be energy independent. When we talk about rising prices, we have to be talking about semiconductor chips, as well as other, lithium and cobalt, other things, if we're going to be talking about making electric vehicles more affordable for folks in the future. And that's this congressional district is the one that leads those conversations. So I'm hoping to change that and make it inclusive, and not something that just reflects the elite and the same old thinking. So, but without further ado, I think I'll end it there. And I just want to thank you all so very much for your time, and any sort of support you can do would mean the world. You can visit our website. And I'm pasting a contribution link in the chat as well, being shameless. But really, if you ever need something, regardless of however you can help, once we are in this seat, it would be an honor to serve you and to help you, and if you guys, wherever you may be in the country. And any family of Jon is a family of mine. And it would be a privilege to meet you all in person, as we go by, as I come back to Orange County, as I go through LA, when I finally hit DC, it would be an honor just to meet you guys on an individual basis and give you a hug just for your time. So without further ado, it's an honor to be with you all. And I hope that in some way I can make you guys proud.
Absolutely.
All right, fam.
Ajwang, thanks very, very much.
Thank
you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody, for attending, really.
you.
You got
Okay.
it.
Everybody.
Okay, bye all.
Cheers.